I might have to mute myself. Oh, okay, I'm already muted. I have my own stream up on my other monitor. Yes, I am. This is what it looks like when I play on desktop. I can only play on desktop. But yeah, I'm gonna share. Copy URL. There we go. Um, uh, uh. Alright, let's see here. This is just the world I was getting set up in. But I am using my cell phone as a webcam. If it would do what it is supposed to do, that'd be great. Okay, but that's how I'm moving my hands. If you ever see me do that in the stream, I am not a headset user. This is me as a deskie. I am waiting for the Steam frame. Very patiently waiting for the Steam frame. Oh my goodness. I think part of my problem is my phone. It's not a webcam planted in the middle of my fucking monitor. It is on a selfie stick behind my monitor. Eh. Eh. That's better. That is so much better. Okay. But yeah, I just realized you can't see my beans. 1 second, let me fix that. Oop. Oop. But yeah, this is my new VRChat avatar. My friend Stripe Magnolia made it for me. She used a Foxy Paw base, so it's like $35 for the base, and then you gotta find somebody who will texture it into your character. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to a gaming world. Oh, hi Spino. If you want, you can hop on and bug me. You don't have to worry about doing any Luna things because this is not a afterlife related stream. This is just somebody who's in the afterlife who is streaming. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is if you want, you can come in here and spit in my background. I has coffee. Yeah, but you should be able to see where I am. I just have very big letters warning people if they want to join me that I am live. I am live on Twitch, so watch it. I don't need the Twitch ninjas coming after me. Okay, since I'm gonna have people joining, I am going to change this to a world anchor. Let's put it right there. Nope, right here. Ta-da! There we go. Alright. Yeah, just make sure you don't break Twitch TOS. I would like to be able to continue streaming. Alright, bump. Anchor. World. Audio from camera. Turn that on. There we go. Now, anybody who joins me is going to be able to be heard. Because I turned on the audio from camera. And it's tied to desktop audio, so it should theoretically work. I'm not sure though. Because I'm a silly bean who is new. Spino. I am on a very good computer, and I am not running a shit ton of things at the same time. Like Maggie does. So if you want, you could come in here and just get really big and spin on top of one of these huts. Okay, you're not gonna break it. If you do break it, I will blame you when I tell my partner. Oh my goodness. Ba-da-da, 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 ba-da-da. But yeah, there's so much delay when it comes to moving my damn hands. Dude, like, it probably won't break, but if it does... Nah, not really. I'm jesting. I wouldn't actually do that to you, Spino. Oh, hehe. Where the fuck is it? Spin. I love the dynamics on the tail, though. It's very, very fluid. Oof, okay. No. Well, Spino, you are a dinosaur. You are a dinosaur. Of course, you break things. Dinosaurs are very known for breaking things. Okay, so there is supposed to be a dinosaur dropping in. Oh, did you get summoned to do something else? Is that what you're saying? Ah, there's the dinosaur.
You so big because it started speeding.
Yeah, but I mean, seriously, if you want to, you can jump on top of one of those huts and just start spinning. If you absolutely wanted to, you could.
I will.
Okay, I have to turn you the frick up. There we go.
I think it turned me off because I'm loud very much.
You just decided you don't want to be in frame or something, because I have it set to vertical instead of widescreen, even though I am on Twitch.
We just do that.
I'm sorry, what?
Never mind. Anyway, also, did anyone explain why the deal that I made? I'm a Luna builder now.
Oh, the reason why you're Luna Builder in the Discord?
Yeah. Do you know the reason?
I do not know the reason.
Okay. Well,
You did what?
So I'm gonna say it word by word. I made okay. I made a deal with Max, right?
You made a deal with Maggie.
Yes, I made a deal with Maggie. So for the next end of the year, right? End of the year, or when she said I have to be Luna on the first.
So all afterlife events, you have to be a Luna.
No. I have to. My profile picture and my name on the Discord is gonna be Luna for the rest of the year.
Oof. That is an oof.
But there comes something for it. So I don't know if you saw on the media crew, right?
Yeah.
Moonlight was became sad because he didn't have a so for all of this, Moonlight is gonna get a new avatar from Bags. Ball. So basically, I traded my profile picture, my name for an avatar for someone.
You're a goof. You are a goof. The fact that you agreed to this, even though you are afraid of Luna. I mean, you were for a long time there. I don't know if you still are.
Hold hold on. Maybe I know, but I'm just gonna say there is still some hatred. But I agreed because I saw them be like, they were sad because someone else had so cool avatars, and they were sad because someone else had better than them. And I do not like, I despise that, you know, equality good. But not bouncing. But
I.
yeah, basically, I. So yeah, basically, wait, hold on. Oh, I know what's happening. Hold on.
Are you having technical
Is this
difficulties?
better? Hello. Is my mic better now?
No, your accent's too thick. I can barely understand you. Your mic is like making your accent thicker. I don't know how, but it is.
No, I just my accent is very thick. That's all. Uh,
Ah, you're good.
the but also as you can hear, I'm speaking very slowly because if I start speaking fast, I'm gonna sound like the XQC guy.
Oh my goodness. I thought you were going to say if you started
It,
speaking too fast, you would switch to Polish.
that happened.
Get so excited you go from English to Polish and back again.
So you know what's funny? I actually do that sometimes to fish with people. That is hilarious when you do it to people. Just like you speak normal Polish, and you know what's the best? When they're tired, you just speak normal English and Polish, and they're just so confused.
Spino. Spino. Do that to my little do that to Nerith. Do that to my brother.
No worry. I evil now because I got the nitro for free.
Yeah, the only thing I would recommend is being cautious if he's so tired.
If
Like if he's tired enough, he will threaten you with a blowtorch.
he already did it, that, don't worry, I threatened him back by saying I will send him a 2 meter long plushie of a fish.
Oh, that is
And you
awesome.
know what's the best part?
What's
After
that?
farmer sent me freaking after farmer gifted me a lot of money, I can literally send him that. And I owe his address, which is even better.
The fact that you were able to find my brother. Oof. And that you probably by accident found me too.
Mm, no, I didn't search for you. But also, you know what's funny? Remember when you you send the picture of your hornet at the outside your house?
Yeah, because my cat was in the window.
Or your porch, right? I knew exactly where you were because I was there looking at the houses, and I
When you were trying to find my
vividly
brother.
remember.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sorry,
Nah. I knew it was gonna happen because we're in the same town.
Mm, yeah.
I have
A lot
coffee.
of things about people. Like for example, oh, coffee. But also another thing I know something funny. I don't know, because many people know what job mags have, right?
I just know the stuff she puts on the internet. That's all I know.
No. Oh, her real life job, what it is. Many people know what it is, right? But I think none of them know where the job is, like the building of the job.
Probably not, because she never gave anybody permission to find it.
Well, there was me because she accidentally said that we made a bet that like if I can find the where her job is, right? But she said she meant what job she has, right? What
Yeah.
job she's working.
And you went and found out her place of employment, didn't you?
Uh, yeah, I interpret it as finding where she lives, where she works.
That is not what she meant. I get you're not used to Americanisms, but come on, dude.
But
You've been trolling the afterlife for so long, you have to know how we talk by now.
yes, but still, I'm English. I'm not fishing from England.
I know,
English.
I know. You're not red.
Very much. Wow, he's from Britain. British.
Yes, they are indeed British.
They are British. Yes. No, I mean, there's a whole story about Red, but I don't think I can talk about it.
I mean, if you're questioning whether or not you can talk about it, that might be a sign that you shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think that is too bad. But the only thing I can say is Red was born in Poland and now they are in England. Yeah,
I
they're
kind of
English.
figured that much out.
Uh,
When you two would randomly start
but also,
speaking Polish, I was like, okay, that makes sense.
yeah, and when they started shipping me with Red, I hated that.
I mean, you're our only Europeans.
Yes.
The rest of us are
Yeah,
just
we're
bumfuck
only.
broke Americans.
No, I mean some of the people are not from there, but also the why they started it is because I said in chat that I am Polish, and Red said that they are Polish too, and Maggie started just yeah.
Maggie gonna Maggie, that's for sure.
Yes, but uh, oh, and I wanted to say, Pan, hey, I should have learned English more, and she should have stopped me before finding where the place of her working is. Okay.
I mean, communication is important, that's for sure.
Yeah, but it would have been a little bit easier to find what her job is instead of where her job is.
I mean, yeah, you could use context clues from her previous lives and her videos she posts on TikTok.
Oh no, you wanna know the reason why I know where Maggie's freaking house is?
She keeps saying you don't, but I'm pretty sure it's because Yash has very anime-colored cars.
Yes, anime, a freaking car with anime is very hard to spot, you know, very hard to not see.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna like a short thumb, you know. It's gonna
Yup.
look like a short thumb somewhere. But
I
also,
mean, it, Life gonna life, and Yash decided he was gonna, like, decide to be a target.
And
I
you
mean,
know
if he was over here by
Yash,
me, he would have been a target.
who? Yash? Yash, a very good person. Yes, we're friends. I mean, okay, if he put on a dinosaur profile picture for a day just because I asked him politely, then yeah, we're friends.
Your
It's
constant
very funny
movements.
though.
The fact that you're constantly moving.
Eh, I just cannot stay like still. But also, but you know what's funny?
What's
Just
that?
just imagine like okay, just imagine Baggy, right? Just
Yeah.
imagine her saying because you know what I did? I specifically targeted people who are close to Max and who are like in the higher bits of the furry afterlife, right? So I
Yeah.
specifically targeted those so so that Maggie doesn't get spinal bullet, but others around her because I knew she wasn't gonna make a deal with me about it. So I targeted, and you just imagine marriage, right? Just imagine yourself being there, and just someone you you said no that they're not gonna do something, turns your partner into what? Into what of you them?
I mean, you only got her hubby. You still gotta get her wifey.
Yeah, I have to find the other person, but for now, I'm gonna let them be.
Yeah,
But
you
also,
might want to let them be,
uh,
cause wifey is still new to this dynamic.
yes, yes, I know. I still have to like introduce them and all that. So for now, they're off limit. Like Maggie's mom, right? She's off
Hmm.
limit too. I cannot do that to him, which
I'm
makes sense.
surprised she
So
is
now,
not in the discords.
who?
I don't think Mama Striped has a Discord account. I think she only appears in the
She's in the
TikToks.
Discord.
Oh, is she
She
in
is in
media?
the Discord. She's in media, but not in for Afterlife for
Ah,
good reasons.
she's only in one of the
Yeah,
two.
yeah. But also, as you can know, she's the only one that I cannot turn into a spinal builder. But I turned her sister, her partner, freaking Kelly, her child, Zyla, just I think the interaction with Yash was like the best because I text her, Max, look at Yash for a second, and she's just you can imagine what she said.
She probably went, no, not the Duck King.
No, she said, I'm gonna fishing kill you, mother. Yeah,
She lost her cool.
that's a good reason. I mean, do you blame her? Do you blame her?
And
Especially after I
the fact that in order to get me to turn on put on a dino profile picture, all I said was you have to find one that's cat-like, and then you found one that's red panda-like,
yeah, it
and
turns
I
out
went,
it
that's close
does have
enough. It's cute.
exists. And you know what's best, man? That I didn't like even like just you did that. No one else. Like just you did like made the deal.
The thing is, though, I kept telling everybody, don't make a deal with Spino. Then I make a deal with you. Like, come on. I am a freaking idiot.
So hey Pat, you know what's funny?
What's that?
That me turning me turning people into spinal builders became a freaking apocalypse to the point where you started saying don't like uh, don't make deals with spinal builder. Sable and Hanzo said that they are never gonna make a deal with me ever.
You know, Sable's a
And
raptor.
that they're gonna make but no, no, become a spy. builder, and started saying that they should probably make an anti-spino builder freaking empire. That thing, and also, and I think the funniest thing ever. You know the recent deal with Maggie, right?
Yeah, the reason why you're a Luna builder.
Yeah. She also added one more thing that from now on, I cannot make people become spino builders from deals. I can still like ask them if they should pick a deal.
Oh, she took away your Alistair
But
privileges.
yeah, so basically, I cannot make people into spino builders out of deals. I can just ask a person like, "Hey, would you like to join the Empire, the Dino Empire?" That's fair, but me making a deal and forcing someone, no.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
But also, I think that,
I mean, if it's a willing deal, I don't see it as forcing, but yeah, I can see where she's coming from.
but also, I'm just gonna say this is gonna be worse for them because if I cannot turn people into spinal builders, I'm gonna do something worse.
Yeah. Just be glad I'm not turning everybody into kittens.
Uh,
I already have one kitten, I don't need more.
so, Pat, you wanna know what I could do? It's so evil, but I'm not gonna because I wanna make this deal a fair thing.
Hmm.
Uh, so I'm Luna builder now, right?
Yeah. You plan on turning everybody into hellhounds.
Yeah, yeah. Mike is Luna too.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in the afterlife and the media crew because of, you gotta be able to find people easy. So, make sure your names
Yeah,
match up.
yeah. All my names are Luna. So my idea was to turn people into Lunas, but I'm not gonna because first of all, the deal I made with Maggie, she said that it's gonna be for the rest of the year, or when she says I can turn back.
Right.
And the second thing is it costs her money to bring the avatar for Moonlight. So yeah.
Yeah, the only reason I was able to get her to retexture this Cleo avatar is because I did an art swap. I am gonna need to add their wifey to the drawing I made as soon as their wifey has an avatar that I can add to it.
Oh, but also, you wanna know something funny? I even if you make ever a deal with me or a bet, right? I know exactly what I will ask, just just for you to suffer. Wanna know what? You have to draw a Spinosaurus face. You have to draw a Spinosaurus face.
You know I draw dragons, right?
But did you draw a Spinosaurus?
I mean, I'm sure I could pull it off. If you mean actual, like, realistic and not furified, then that'd be hard.
No. I mean, on the freaking dinosaurs cannot be like it is scientifically impossible.
No, I mean, like the eyeballs.
Yeah.
Turning them into forward facing instead of eyeballs on the side of the face. That's what I mean by furified.
Oh no. Oh yeah, yeah. Like a realistic one.
Turning them from prey to predators.
You wanna know why? Because after if you lose a bet to me I would just wanna remind you for every second that you draw this, who beat you in a bet? Just
I would probably just do it for the funsies because why the fuck not? I need to get better at drawing other things aside from just cat, dog, cow. You would be giving me practice. This is not punishment.
but still, it would be funny. But yeah, if you ever, what, man, if you ever do that for myself, just because I would just be freaking thankful.
Are you saying you want me to draw a Spinosaur?
I have have to get it from somebody else. Sorry, because if I get it for free, I do not like getting things for free for no reason.
Dude, you know I do art commissions, right?
I know.
You just gotta figure out how to translate like $10 into whatever the fuck Polish currency is.
Złoty. It means goldens.
Yeah, you just gotta go from USD to whatever Polish is.
Yeah, I know. But I got it on PayPal currently. The money from TikTok thing. Yeah.
Dude, I literally have my PayPal connected to my Discord.
Hold on.
Are you about to pull up my profile?
Perchance. Możliwe, że wezmę twój, otworzę ci profil i przełożę ci 200 tam złotych, ile chcesz. Perhaps, you know.
Is there anybody Polish in chat that can translate that?
No, there's that.
Yeah, because no, you didn't put it in text, so I can't just copy paste into Google Translate.
But also I can do this. Vinte cuantos peres, panto peres di verento.
If you say that any more robotic, people are gonna think you're a robot. Then that's gonna turn you into a protogen.
Ich din deine Hunde festival. Sie Hunde Halle.
Oh my goodness. You know what?
I can also speak dinosaurs.
Isn't that just streaming? Yep, that is an avatar sound, people.
Rar. Rar or something. Rar, and I like fish.
Don't make me boop you.
Rar, fish you will never book me. Rar. I'm too fast. Also, I can do this, hold on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Hang on.
Try me. Try me. Come on.
I zoomed out so you were completely in frame.
Try and book me now. Chill it up. Okay.
I got you.
Can you did? Oh, try now.
Nah.
Give me a second.
Yeah, I have the camera set up to look at me but not follow me. It's world anchored.
Hold on, because I think two things are gonna happen. Because first of all, I have to change it on my name on freaking VRChat because of the new rule. Yes, I will have to become Luna Builder on VRChat too, like the name only.
Okay. You're gonna have to do that on the website. We have a new person.
New person? Who?
Hello!
Wow.
Hello.
Hello. Are you with that?
You did see the warning, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Just, I put that there so everybody who joins here is like, oh, I consent to this.
Also, Pat, I found a funny thing. Two things. Because I can, on the server, I can add, like, custom emojis and freaking things, right?
Yeah, I have a separate server and stuff for that.
Reaction things, right?
Yeah.
You can add them on. For some reason, I can add a custom sounds, custom emojis, custom reaction emojis. I
Y-
don't know what.
you might want to talk to Maggie about getting that
Okay.
fixed so you don't do dumb shit.
So I made. I already did. I added. Many things like the Yash saying lock in.
You're a goof.
Nah, just very much psychic. No.
Didn't sense me doing that now, did ya?
Hold on, I'm typing something. Oh shit, this is lagging my phone. Hey, Pat, if you're able to look in Discord and general chat in For Afterlife.
Alright, one sec.
Made something.
I got to switch screens. I've been pinged twice in my server. Ba-da-ba-ba.
Did you see?
Why would you make a great wall of Spinos? Why would you do this?
Oh my gosh! And you wanna know the funniest thing?
Ball.
It actually lags people's freaking phones. Ball.
Ah,
Yeah, for some reason there's invisible walls.
he, this world is knackered for me.
I mean, as from what I understand, this is still in beta, this world.
Yeah, the water I can only see half of in different planes on my different eyes.
Yeah, well, the other day, I used the giant fucking mirror on the wall, and the water just fucking vanished.
Yeah.
Ooh, mirror on the wall. How you doing?
Oh my.
Pat,
Yes.
if you're asking, because I think the only person who ever can make a Abby for me that will suit me is gonna be Trixie. Because remember the deal with that I made with the Spinosaurus Abby?
I'm not sure. I don't really remember a lot of your deals. You make so many.
Okay, so basically, you wanna just okay. You wanna know what's the best thing about this avatar?
Swear to God, if you do the Nokia.
Disappointing.
Disappointed cat noises. That's all you hear is disappointed cat noises. Okay, but I have a feeling since this world is being super buggy, it might be best if we go to another world.
Ooh. I have idea.
Do you want to go troll the people in Among Us?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna have to change my camera and shit. Okay. Get really close. Escape. Camera. Stream cam. Anchor. Local.
I'm just gonna say preemptively, Pat, if somebody bothers you, ask me, I'm gonna troll him.
Do it. I mean, I have a giant thing on my screen saying I'm live, so I should probably edit it to Twitch.
But also, Pat, I'm just gonna say preemptively, I wouldn't be so sure that because for some people on this VR chat, right, it's gonna be at the indicator. Go say something great.
Yeah, that's why I have my streams at to adult only.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't wanna, we can go in another world, you know.
Yeah, we can just instance hop until we find one that's not full of racists. All right. Worlds. My worlds, favorites. Mugus.
Oh gosh.
All right.
Oh, I
Let's
can't
see
believe
here.
this.
We're not gonna do any group events because they're already doing their own thing. We'll just join a public one. All right. See the portal?
Yes. Abadabadoom. Abiribi.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, that's a fun thing. Psst, bah. Okay. So I found out that when I'm going in between worlds, the camera feed to OBS just cuts. So glad I have the rainbow fucking background.
Ah.
Going Uranus. Nah.
Otherwise, it would just be black void.
Oh, we can do body based
Okay. So I have the camera set to follow me.
Right.
That way.
I don't know that's body. That's it.
Yep, and it's set to max visibility. That way people know, like, hey, this floof is streaming.
Yeah, funny thing. Yeah, this avatar is very much broken, as you can clearly see.
Why? Why are you in the floor?
It's broken. Also, this is me when I crawl.
Oh, almost losing my headset. I laughed so hard my headset almost fell off.
Hey people, we're playing Among Us. You guys want to play with us?
Sure, do you mind if you have a live streaming floof?
What?
I'm live on Twitch.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
I just got here, so I don't know.
Oh.
But I saw there were like 6
No.
players in there, and apparently they're doing like hide and seek or something. I don't know, some stupid stuff.
Oh.
Oh, they're doing hide and seek instead.
Oh, the hide and seek.
They said
Oh.
they're doing it just for that round, so I kind of stepped out because I kind of just want to play Among Us, to be honest.
Yeah, the standard Among Us is better than hide and seek.
I didn't know there was a freaking
This is gonna
hide and
take
seek
a
in
long
this.
time.
No, it because it's standard in most like regular VR, not VR, Among Us is. People just go, okay, whoever is imposter, just find everybody. Also, hi Wario. I see you're using one of the Super Smash Bros. Skins.
Wario. Wario, how do you feel about? Oh no! Oh no!
Do not become Onion Man.
Run!
Can you do a Wario impression, Lord?
It's me, Wario. Let's have some.
Wario. Wario, question. How do you feel about your guy not being in Smash Bros?
He tried to beg
Hey,
me.
Ultra Kill.
He tried to beg me, but freaking. Can I show y'all something? Watch this. Look.
Nope, nothing.
I'm scared. Oh no.
I was gonna ask you a question.
You got
but
farted
no, I
on.
just don't feel like it.
Get farted on.
Oof.
Hey, Butt Lord.
They,
Luigi.
Smash.
Just damn. I agree.
Interesting.
I agree. Hey, he's on a point. He's on a point. Yeah, he has a point. Okay.
Smash or pass, shy guy. What? Was
See.
it too far?
That's how I talk to people all the way out with them.
Cross the line,
Bam,
shy guy.
that's all.
He's gonna
Yeah.
It must be so.
What happened to your legs? Your legs just keep vanishing.
Hey, smash or pass, Penguin King.
What's goody, gang?
No. What's up?
Uh-huh.
Okay, a PC player. Oh, shoot, a PC player.
What's
Lo
up?
siento, cantos por.
Check out this portal. Check out this portal. Hold on, let me just
Huh?
put a portal over there.
There is no portal.
Yeah, I don't see a portal.
I see a portal.
Oh, my avatar on.
Oh, no.
You see? Damn.
Yeah, this
No.
It's gonna take a while to load.
Looks like it's labeled as Friends Plus, so probably Buttlord. I actually don't remember how I became friends with you.
Oh, that?
It's me, Fonzie official.
Interesting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I changed my name. Changed my name to this.
Okay. What'd you do? Get, like, do you lose a deal or something?
No, I just got I just felt to change it. I felt to change
Smash
it.
or pass, King Boo.
No.
Smash.
Oh,
That's a ghost.
I thought that was gonna be a smash
What?
for sure.
Ah, crap, we have a William Afton.
Classic. Oh, now I'm the classic one. Now.
Damn.
Uh-huh.
Five Nights at Warriors.
Yo. For some reason, I think he's an imposter, you know? There's some indication he's an imposter.
We are playing hide and seek, by the way. We're playing hide and seek.
Oh.
Smash or pass, Diddy Kong.
Smash. Oh, wait, no, pass.
Wait, isn't Diddy Kong a child?
Yes, I know, yeah.
He's a little chip.
Everyone's counting on me to pull up my mesh crasher and crash the lobby. I hope that I can help you blue screen your PC, cause if I do then that will literally make my whole week. It's so much fun being a toxic member of VRC, because then you can crash people who try to ERP. I'm gonna go and show them what some steers look like. Hopefully their PC isn't fucking shite. Oh wait, I'm supposed to be singing. Oh shit. Crash, crash, hee. I almost lost my fucking head. Oh my fucking god. I'm gonna scream fuck again. Crash, crash, hee. What's this mess all over me? Play with me until my PC gets fucked up. Fuck no. Please don't.
Oh my goodness. Whoever that person is needs to not.
Fuck you, whore. Is that a client that rips side piece? Fuck! Every time I go in the box, my PC gets fucked over. Holy fuck! Every time I go in the great park, I meet a bitch that's trying to fuck. I tell her suck my dick. Crash, crash, hee hee hee. What's this mess all over me? Play with me until my PC gets fucked up. Fuck no, please don't DDoS me. My dad's trying to watch TV. Holy fuck you whore. Is that a client that rips IPs? Holy shit, you're cool. I wish I could be your friend, bro. Why don't you friend
Goodness.
another time? Why can't you just get me? All you fucking assets and IPs that you stole from little kids. I'm a fucking boss, you fucking whore.
Okay, whoever that is, can you stop?
What the fuck? Oh, is it over now? Oh, it's fucking over. Oh. I volunteer to eat your ass, by the way. Just really quick, I want to put that up there. Oh. I'm going to fucking hell. On God. I hate this shit. There's laughing coffin though, so like, I'm in, boys.
Do you love me like I love you?
Do not report the body. Okay, United States.
Okay, can somebody fix the damn lights?
We're playing hide and seek. There's no reporting.
Yo, this is very much it's chaotic, I love it.
I look so happy.
I fixed the lights 3 times already.
Turn on the lights.
What he said.
No, there are 2 rules.
What he said.
I'm very unique where I'm the imposter.
Actually, I'm the imposter.
You can't vote at the
You're the imposter.
Funny.
There's no voting.
Right.
There's no
Yeah,
magic.
all you have to do
Funny.
is turn off the lights and just kill everyone.
Oof.
Yeah, but count for 10 minutes before you start recording.
And then the rules of the hide and seek.
Okay, everybody hide! Everybody hide!
Rose. Why did they say rose?
Yeah? I didn't.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know, I'm just fixing the wiring.
Spino, come here. Oh.
And you dead? Wow.
I'm staying here because I can catch the imposter. I'm staying here.
Okay.
Okay, why y'all trying to vote kick Spino? What do you do?
Turn off all of these, okay?
It doesn't work for everyone, you know that, right?
Ugh. Dude, they're trying to vote kick you.
I guess talking.
They're trying to vote kick me? Why? What did I do?
I don't know.
I like that.
I'm not turning the...
Actually, I'm thinking number 1 through
Hi.
10. Whoever gets
Wow.
closest doesn't die.
Chat, we're cooked.
Dumbass.
Okay, why is everything sort of flashing?
Oh God, he's over there.
That's
Hey.
good.
No, archery is insane. This
I'm
I was like, oh hell no.
Hey,
The
can we
first
get the
time I
host
got
out of here? I don't want to play. I don't want to play hide and seek.
You can leave.
I really
See, everybody down? Everybody down?
I had Kobe here for a second.
Kind of fine.
Yeah, but we're playing Among Us, so like.
Did you see what I did? I said, what you looking at behind
Shader
him?
man.
And he turned around and ran.
Okay, Spino, do you want to go to a different instance?
Run me outside. What the fuck am I doing?
Alright, let's go to a different instance.
Two keyframer mans go round me outside. Round me outside. Round me outside.
I was the one who
Yes,
was
who's
fixing
back?
the lights entire
Back
time.
again.
What?
Who's back? Tell a friend.
Oh my goodness.
Guess who's back? 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 Now, now. Yeah, 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 yeah. Bow now, now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Friend somebody.
I've created a shader that nobody wants to pay power for no more.
Okay. There we go. Let's see if Spino joins us.
Oh, dude, a new portal. Sick. Oh my god, are you fucking me right now? Are we like? It's
Yay. And I brought
Spino
friends. I
started.
brought the cookie friend. Hello.
Okay. We brought the cookie man.
I was literally like 2 seconds off.
Oh, yeah.
I brought the cookie man with us, that's good.
Yeah. I saw Kelly log on, so I don't know if she's gonna run around and find us or not.
There's no...
Okay, it looks like they're playing Standard Among Us.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever seen hide and seek in an Among Us game.
I mean, the actual, like, Among Us app has a hide and seek function. It's just not ported over to VR, so people try and replicate it themselves.
It was kind of boring.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just stand there and hope you don't get found, and if you get found, you get sent back to here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way more fun in real life, you know?
Yes. Yes, it is. Because there's the, like, sense of actually being there. I mean, I'm sure for the people in headsets, it feels good to, like, play it, but meh. I'm a desky with a webcam, that's all I am.
Yeah, but also the thing is with the the imposter sees everything and also just moves the same speed as the innocent. So
Yeah. Wait, can't the imposters see like in the dark and stuff? What's the
Yes. Yeah, so it's like not even fair.
that's stupid. Yeah.
That is really stupid. See,
Also,
if I was the seeker, I would throw random portals around so people couldn't see anything.
No. Listen, the funniest thing. The imposter was like, which one of us will die, right? And I said,
It was like, pick a number.
Behind you. He turned around, and I
Dude,
freaking ran.
the imposter called me a bitch. He was like, "You don't want to play hide and seek, you bitch." I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah, people be people
And then I was like, "Oh,
quiet.
All right."
What are you doing?
Banana man.
Banana man.
I like the banana man.
Yeah.
Man, I really don't like you, Sixer. I knew it was you the whole time. I didn't do anything about it though.
So glad I have the camera facing towards me and not everybody else.
That's cool.
Damn. How? They have slapped you and then laugh at you menacingly.
I don't care, I don't have an app.
Go and slap him back.
No, I am not doing that. I am not that kind of person.
You hear that?
Oh, shit. Reactor.
Come here.
How could you?
Mother fluff. Oh. Chat, are you seeing this? Like, what the crap?
Yeah, it was totally fine out.
Shoot, I hate Top Shoot. I thought he was gonna vouch for me.
Dude, I was going to, like, I went to reactor, and then I was gonna turn it on, and then I fucking died.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Like, bruh, you said how could you, and then you killed me, like, what the fuck?
It's good.
Bro, I don't like Top Shoot anymore.
What Top Shoot do?
Oh, he didn't vouch for me.
He be himself.
Or could he? Yeah. I vouched for him every time he was imposter.
Yeah,
Dude, I did medbay scan, and a couple people like, "Oh, you're clear," and then I just fucking die.
Oh, sorry. I didn't even know you did scan. I don't like killing people that did scan, but unless it comes down to it, I kind of have to, cause like, killing people that are clear is probably.
It's like a one-way ticket to. Oh shit! The fact that you did it in front of a bunch of people. That's why you got caught.
No, I knew what I was doing. I was gonna see if I could get away with it, cause I before like you, FF72, Sixer, and Spino joined, or in Dixon, I was like basically running the server by just saying, oh, it's this person, and they would just agree no matter what.
Oh my goodness, that is so sad.
I know. I don't know what's wrong with them.
Yo, I'm hearing your voice 2 times since we were talking in call and an app.
I know you are too.
You can mute each other in your call, or mute each other here.
Well, it's kind of how we just talk between each other. So,
Oh, so when you're like not in the same spot, you can still talk to each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yo, where is this?
What's up? Us.
Ooh, Reddy's on. I might have to invite Reddy.
Da.
I can text him to get on. Wait, where's my phone? Here. What is he? Bitch. Yo, I'm telling him that I'm saying I'm not gonna say you should get on. I'm gonna say that you want him to get on.
I'm calling him.
Yo, what?
Nice Silk Song avatar.
Yo, Vince, if you don't get on, I'm gonna spam call you.
Yeah, I said yo, Wood wants you on. Yo, Digo. Oh, behind you. Oh, you? Oh, sorry. I'm just kind of blind. We love that. That was amazing.
I'm gonna spam
Yeah, my bad. I'm in my soundboard right now, so if I'm not answering you, that's why.
No, we're just saying you're amazing. That's really all.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Is he? Wait, is Vince not answering you?
No.
There I go, I'm dead.
How could you? How could you? I vouched for you when you were an imposter. You can't vouch for me once.
I haven't been an imposter this entire game.
Yes, you have. Good.
I have?
Yes, you have.
I have?
Yes. Yes, you have.
The fact that bro forgot is interesting.
The fact that, like, some people actually didn't vote for me was kind of funny. You might as well give up.
Oh shit, somebody's got a death note.
This is incredible. I am marking it. Oh, I am marking it so good. Marking it like this makes me feel in.
It's Final Card.
This is good news,
Ugh.
They're all dead.
They died.
Everybody died?
Yeah, no, I'm alright.
I didn't want to snitch, but we didn't have really much time left.
Dude, you shanked the
Alright.
I'm pretty sure you shanked the shit out of me in electrical, bro.
That's funny.
This instance is chill.
Hey, I like it. I made my people here, finally.
Yes, this is your environment, and I mean, it's fun.
Yeah.
It probably helps that I have like a giant fucking warning on my head, just be like, hey, Twitch is here.
I'm not sure about this guy though.
Yo, banana, bro.
Alright. Oop, wiring. This one goes there. That one goes there. Boop. Boop. Okay. Okay, somebody has global music. I don't know who it is. Oh! Cookie Man's free. Clear. Okay.
What is he doing? Look above you.
The fact that there's a freaking child here.
Yeah, he keeps saying my name and it's making me really nervous.
Come on. Guys, everyone. He's got
Because my name is a bad word. Like I wasn't. Anyways.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh shit. Oxygen.
You probably shouldn't look at my name if you're streaming on Twitch.
Okay. Put in the freaking code. Do it. Do it. Okay.
Come on. No, I'm doing it first. Right, you're clear. Wait a minute. Don't run just yet. I'm gonna clear myself. Oh shit. Bro, okay.
Imposter doesn't know how to play.
Okay,
They're
wait,
just
can you still
spamming
see
everything.
it? Look. You can still see.
Okay.
There you go.
Alright, so you're confirmed.
Trash. Guys, I have trash.
I'm confirmed.
Right, good. You're confirmed as well. How about you?
I have trash.
You've got rubbish. Right, let's go. I'll come and have a look.
I don't have scans, sadly.
Let's have a gander.
Oh shit.
Open it up.
This ain't good, is it? Tell you what, man, I don't like being trapped near. I'm claustrophobic.
Keep a good eye on me while I do this. La.
I got it.
God is finally.
Top shoot is clear.
Alright, do you have prime shields?
I don't trust that man.
I feel like an area of attack ability that I just used.
Yeah, don't worry. When it comes to this game, look above you rather than below you when it comes to vents.
Oh, fucking hell.
Got it.
Oh.
It's the dinosaur.
It's the dino.
I
never trusted the dino.
Hang on. Y'all think it's Spino Builder?
Why?
Why?
That's a hell of a name. I'm sorry to get you out. That's a good
Get
name.
out of town, Spinal Builder. We know what you are.
The hell did I do?
Spinal builder, bro.
We
Get
know
out
That's a
of
hell of a
here.
name.
What's your reasoning?
Get
Why
out.
is Mark treating your head like a stripper pole?
You're
What is he
allowed.
doing?
Oh, it's my guardian angel.
Y'all know there's a child in here, right? Top shooter is a child.
Ooh, somebody
It's
got
us tough
right.
shit.
The hell did I?
It's alright.
Damn,
The hell
Spino,
did I
you're really
do?
needed here. Jeez.
Get out of town, Spinal
The hell
Builder.
did I?
Y'all. Okay, now we got one more to deal with.
Goodness. Can you just do lights? I don't want to do this anymore.
You want me to do lights?
Not my kind of bud.
Yeah, they're amazing, guys.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, they're cracked.
Ba-da, da-da, 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 da-ba. Yeah, yeah. Jump.
Now I can, since I did a task.
Okay, got one more.
No, he's faking scan.
All of the above, actually.
How do you think scan? How do you
Faking scan.
Sorry for putting y'all on a wall. Didn't realize I was right there. Okay. That is all of my tasks completed. I'm gonna go sit in security now. Oh shit! All of my tasks are done.
It is not your fault, bro.
No, it is not me.
I think I know who it is. It's top shooter. It's top.
No, it's not top,
It's
bro.
top, it's
That's-
top,
no,
it's top,
top
it's
did
top.
trash.
Top.
No, top's
It's
clear.
top.
Alright,
Top's
put it
clear.
on your
Top's
life.
clear.
Put it on your life.
Top's clear.
Top's
Top's
clear.
clear. Top's fucking clear.
Okay, so
Top's
if
clear.
it's not top, it's you.
No.
No.
Top's clear.
Because I literally just
Top's
scanned.
clear.
Yeah, put your life on it.
I don't have enough information, so I'm just skipping.
If it's not
He's
top
got-
shooter,
literally
it's gonna be
just scanned.
Philando.
No.
What is this? Alright, I know I kept on saying you were faking it, but I
Hang on a minute.
If it's not top shooter, it's
accusations are
Philando. That's what I'm
running
hearing.
evidence that it was
You know the crazy part?
it wasn't you. I said I
Wasn't okay.
It's me. Why are you defending your murderer?
Very cheerful, very cheerful, very cheerful.
What?
You're dead.
Me and what's his name?
Fuck
You're
it.
dead, Top Shooter. You got voted out.
Well, it's a tie.
He's not gonna vouch for me.
Oh, I can't see Top Shooter.
I think we're fucked now, mate. I'm not gonna lie.
Just say Top Shooter.
There's only one.
Okay. Oh shit, the oxygen.
Got it. Oh my god, the ship's gonna blow up. The ship's gonna bloody blow up.
Oh no, that's if the reactor
The
goes.
ship from. Stop the. Oh no, it don't matter, mate. I don't want to die from oxygen either.
Oh.
Yo.
The fact that Mo was just standing there while the oxygen was dying.
I don't trust cheerful wood truck.
It's not top.
Alright.
It's
I don't
not
So we're gonna
top.
cheerful?
Yeah,
Not top.
I don't trust her.
Okay, how is Invincible upside down?
Cheerful is closest to
Why are you upside down? How are you upside down?
Because he's cool.
Hey!
Come on, put like your pipe and smoke it.
GG too easy.
How dare you?
GG too easy?
Yeah.
GG too easy, mate.
What?
We cooled, by the way, when we were in
Come here.
Oh my goodness. What? What?
Yeah.
No, Spino's got, fuck.
Yeah, I know. No worries. So the reason why I got killed is because Palando and the cheese thing, they're teaming up, and they just left. Wow. They kept.
Okay, the fact that Top is a child, like,
And also Palando is 14 too.
Okay, but a 14-year-old, it's a 14-year-old. 14-year-old's gonna do 14-year-old shit. Top Shooter sounds like he's in, like, 3rd grade.
I am. Look at his. Hold on. Let me read his bio.
Hi.
Let me read the top shooter's bio. I am not a kid. I am a teen. I turned 13 tomorrow. Don't vote, kick me. I just wanna have fun and friends, please. I'm a human like you. Squeaky voice don't matter. I still like you. VC block me if you don't wanna hear me. Love you, and I do like how I talk. That remind me. I'll try to stop. Yeah, now.
Seriously. That is somebody who is desperate to be seen as a teenager at the very least, when, like, it doesn't even write like a teenager.
They're like 11. I bet they're 11 or 10.
Yeah, that's what I mean by, like, a 3rd grader. It's like 3rd, 4th grade.
Jesus.
Yeah. Over here, at least. Random jingle activation.
Yo, wash your clothes. I mean, your clothes are done.
So I think this one is AFK.
Me.
Okay. So the fact that Palando is just sitting there, not doing shit, and Top Shoot is running around and trying not to get killed.
Also, Pat, remember, I'm gonna get revenge on Palando for killing me the other way around because for no reason.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna get revenge on them.
Well, here's the thing though. Bro knew you were imposter.
Yeah, because.
Oh, I see. If they're screen sharing.
No, they're not. They were literally next to each other, like they're in a group. Like they are sitting. You see how Palando is sitting? Yeah, they were sitting like beside the whole round.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Jesus, this silly guy.
Oh my goodness. People just be running around trying not to die. And then there's Sixer.
Pad. And you know what's the best thing? Instead of like curse or swear, right? He put cuss, like sis.
He didn't even actually swear, he just put cuss word insert here.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, bro is actually a child.
Oh my god.
Okay.
He misspelled the word friends. He misspelled the word friends. He put friends.
Oh. I mean, if it's flipping the I and the E, I do that all the time, so I can't judge it.
Like, and he said, I'm still like.
The fuck is that?
Pat.
Was that you?
Okay. No. Wish I was someone else, but also my pad.
Okay, whoever's music is universal, I'm gonna turn them off. I was just making sure nobody was hiding behind the pole. That was a TikTok sound! Okay, no baby, no money. No baby, no money. Baby, no money. I don't like his music. It's very trying to be Eminem, but trying to not be taken nearly as seriously.
Yeah, fair enough. He makes a lot of money, so.
I know. Like, his name is Baby No Money, makes a shit ton of money.
What is it?
Username, like, the music, Baby No Money. Says he's got no money.
I know who he is.
That was fucking funny.
I know.
You have so many cameras surrounding you.
Yeah, I know. My friend Gorka.
Gorka, what the?
I'm confused.
He the guy. Chair.
Ah, the invincible dude. Where'd Spino go?
Let's just say he had a fun time.
He took me away. Pat, do not sit on this. Do not sit on this chair.
I know. Do not sit on the mysterious red man's chair.
No, go and sit on it, Pat. For no reason.
I don't see you.
Just
There's a chair.
here. Chair.
Am I supposed to have an avatar on?
Yeah, over here. Over here at the wall.
Or the funny guy.
No.
This dude in red.
No? I figured it's someone else.
Oh! There goes Cookie Man.
Where's the?
Oh, wow.
How did he know it was me?
How did he know it was me? My fault, my fault.
Okay, Invincible. I saw your cameras on the Cookie Man. How are you doing that?
Being imposter. I'm being
Let's go, dude.
I'm imposter. It's the most obvious thing ever.
How'd you know it was me?
GG, too easy.
How'd you know it was me, bro? Oh, be myself.
I had a sneaky suspicion, that's all.
Hey guys, look.
Okay. Select mute.
Polano is just kind of an obvious killer. I have to wait till he gets in the room. Alright, let's go.
Chill out, bro. Hang on a minute.
Well, as long as I...
Oh my goodness. I gotta scan, people.
It's been a year, Daddy. I really miss you. Mommy says you went to the store to get milk. Anyways, I'm failing all my classes, and Mommy hits me very frequently, and she changed my name to Tickle Tipson. Anyways, Daddy, I forgive you for abusing me. Please come back.
Okay, whoever has their universal on, please turn it off. That audio that I keep hearing, I would like for it to stop.
That's not me. You can sit on the chair.
I'm not sitting on the chair.
I mean, it's just a chair. Until he doesn't send you in space at like 6,000 miles per hour.
I am not looking to get sent into the freaking stratosphere.
Well, I mean, nobody can use that vent now. If
anybody tries to use that vent, they have to
Want to fuel the
turn my
engine?
apps off and use it.
Wait, woo.
Oh, Banana Man's dead.
Kill self-report.
Who died?
I don't trust.
It wasn't me. It was not me. It wasn't me, you little shit. It was not me.
I don't trust.
Who did he see? What was the last task? I was fucking
on chill. On the chill.
I don't trust
Sorry.
him. He was the closest one.
I had a med scan none of y'all decided to watch because y'all are pussies.
What are you on about? It was not me.
I decided to be evil.
Language. Pad. Language. This is exactly there's a tie here.
I blocked the child.
That was so indirect.
The child can't see me, nor can he hear me.
But still, damn language bad. Bad. Bad.
Dude, I'm a cat. I can say it.
This. Bad.
Okay.
I just processed that information. What? But it wasn't me. You know?
You were until you just.
I mean, I was in the wrong place at
Had
the wrong time.
no cuss word.
Dude, why?
People on this ship. We have a
Ooh, Spenny was in pasta.
We have a white guy.
Fish.
Na, 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 na.
Said you were dead.
Download data.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There while doing that.
Watch me do it. Nah. Wait, Schmook, I don't trust her myself. Alone.
There's one where you can like select one person out of like the entire group and just give them every task in the game. It's kind of funny.
Go ahead, do it.
Hello, Floof.
Hi.
What are you doing?
I am heading towards my next task.
Oh, okay.
How we doing, chat? Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do.
Fish.
I just got fished, didn't I?
Fish.
Spino, where are you? Okay.
Oh, hey, I didn't know you were in the vent.
Thought I turned you off?
What were you laughing at, huh?
It's the invincible dude. It's the invincible dude.
You laughing at me, kid?
Not me, Brody. I'm already done on my tasks.
Dude, the invincible dude is dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
No, he's right there. He's on top of the gingerbread cookie.
What? How the fuck is he? I'm confused.
He's not dead.
But the thing says he's dead. What the hell?
He's reincarnated.
It's just because I was sitting on his head. I guess the game considered me dead.
It's my guardian angel. You should get one.
That's my Twitch chat.
We all know who it is, right?
Your Twitch chat, your guardian angel.
When I have chatters.
Bunch of little imps in there. I don't know if there's our angels.
You all
Depends on which side you end up on.
Why you look it up so much?
Size of my weapon.
Anyway, all of my tasks are done. I'm just kind of vibing.
I keep looking up at your miraculous form, invincible man.
Oh my goodness.
The child is blocking me. We all know who it is at this point. Who is it?
The red guy.
The gingerbread cookie, if I had to guess, since invincible dude is dead, apparently.
Yeah, he's dead.
Okay, so.
Yeah, you want to see something?
You instigator.
I'm voting for dicks. I forget you can't kill people in this.
You're voting for what?
For you, Dixon.
It's
a gingerbread man.
Turn around so I can vote. Turn around so I can vote.
Oh, whoops, my bad.
The invincible man is dead.
Oh shit, you realize if I die, you die, right?
Yeah. That's how I'm gonna get off.
If we get one out, we get both out. Oh damn. He what?
My personal chair.
So wait, he's dead, but he's not?
He's just using. What the fuck? How are you still here, dude?
Oh, don't worry, I'm not gonna do it.
What the fuck?
It's a child.
No, I just watched Invincible kill somebody.
Whoa, calm it down,
He was all the way over there. He was here the entire time. It was the child.
No, I watched him go over there.
Oh, is that what you're saying, the child? I didn't see it there.
I think it's the child.
Dude, I have the child blocked.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I'm not listening to this fool.
Oh, is that what the block is? Someone was saying they were blocking someone for?
Yeah, it's fine. It's just a child.
Yeah, dude, hit that button again. It's invincible.
Oh, I'm gonna hit it.
Like, he was dead and now he's not, bro. Is for sure hacking.
Yeah.
I was sitting on Dixon the entire time. I guess they counted me as dead. You watch your ass next round.
Alright, will do.
You? I guess I'll give you a pass, since you know Dixon. What's your name?
Why the hell are everyone starting to vote against Gorka?
Bro, because he was dead and now he's not. And then oh my goodness. Okay. Dude, Invincible was dead and now he's not. And then what the fuck? I swear to God, if that is just Viltrumite bullshit, I'm gonna scream.
Gorka, do it. Gorka, do it.
Hey, Floof, I think you're freaking out too much.
You're right. I've just been caffeinated.
Porky, where you at? There you are.
Yoink. Why do people keep calling me Floof?
I've only got a right hand, which is really annoying. I have to
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing okay. Okay, that's done. I gotta go run over here. And I'm gonna upload.
Just two-handed.
Just
two-handed.
Come here.
Just two-handed.
No, I'm doing a thing.
Two-handed.
My head control was
Okay.
There, I did. Yep.
Give me a second. Colors, I hate colors. Fuck.
You being called? Oh my goodness.
Got it.
I can't even run very fast.
I'm going to kill you.
I'm gonna do it live.
I am going to kill you.
I have a turn or I go forwards. Is this one hand
Da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum.
The one with the light. The one with the light.
Odd.
I'm saving my prime shields for if I
I
get
have no
accused.
clue how to do this.
You just raise the one with the light on it.
Oh, there we go. There's the one I was looking for.
What do you mean you broke it? I broke it.
Wait.
I hate this.
Give me a second.
Why are you screaming
I
minors?
hate numbers.
I'm a minor.
Oh, okay.
Shit, who turned off the lights? Okay.
Go to the step diverted power. That's where you finish your task.
Well, that's what we can all do, mate.
No, I've only got one controller. It's one hand movement.
What does you mean by that?
Where's the fluff? Shh, fuck you. Fuck you, Spino. I'm not sure if you're still watching the stream or not, but fuck you. Oh my goodness. Shit just... Here we go. Let's listen into this bullshit. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so chat, this is what my little profile picture would look like in VRChat. When I don't have to spend a shit ton of money and just do an art swap, which is essentially, I did a drawing for Striped Magnolia, and then she just went and retextured the Cleo avatar by Foxy Paw for me. Okay, so I'm guessing I can only listen into them when somebody calls an emergency meeting. That's fun. But once I get an actual headset, this will probably look way better. That's for sure. Because you won't have my glitchy hands, which actually have a several second delay from when I raise my arm IRL to transfer. Which is kind of stupid, but meh. He's fine. I'll deal with it. I will deal with it until the Steam frame drops. Da-da-da-da. No. Okay, so that brief second of silence, I was going to my notifications on my watch. I have my own stream open on my second monitor, so I can keep an eye on the delay. And that... I didn't realize I was silent for that long. Spino! Oh, okay, that's what that is. Okay, here. Let's spin the camera for y'all to see what this looks like. Stream camera. Okay, this, Oh. Okay. Da-da-da-da. Book. Behavior. Hit me.
You just randomly said, why don't we vote top, and it did it. What?
He stinks like poo, bro. What do you want? Get him out.
What is
Get him out.
Gorka, you believe me,
Look up.
No, I'm not even paying attention.
Oh my goodness.
It's okay.
Go.
I'm not even in the game.
Yeah,
I'm
ready.
clicking another tab.
Ready,
Okay, now I gotta get you.
Man, that's some bull.
Okay, I'm going to set this as position 2.
Damn it.
Wait, who's the one that died? Was it Spinny? Was it Sphincter?
It's the banana man.
It's banana, banana. Okay, we're voting banana.
Okay.
Yeah, let's eat him alive.
Okay, eat him alive. I'm the imposter, but I haven't done a simple question. Like, generally wasn't me.
Well, there was a dead body near you.
Oh my god, I'm not. This is unbelievable.
I was gone for 5 seconds. What?
I'm the imposter, but it was not me.
I was gone for 5
It was
seconds.
near reactor. It was like a woman on camera. It was like a woman
I
on
promise you,
camera
I
over
promise.
Anyway, he's gone.
Banana man.
I didn't. I promise you.
Come forth at once, because you are a little backstabbing bastard. I'm never trusting you again. I will not
promise
fuck
you.
out of my face. I swear to God, bro.
Spenny, I promise you, I didn't kill anyone. I didn't kill anyone that whole round. That was all the dinosaur.
But you can confirm I was one of Spino deaths.
Exactly. You were also
Maybe
a
I was
Spino death.
too
He was in
quick
the
in my
ceiling.
anger. Maybe I was too quick in my anger. I'll think about it.
Anyway, I'll be back.
I backed you up. Fuck you.
I didn't kill anyone. I'm technically
get your
innocent.
batteries.
I'm technically as
Go get your
innocent as
batteries.
everyone else.
Go get your batteries. Go get your batteries.
Right, I'll be back.
But put you in a pack and smoke you.
Top shitter. It's top shitter. It's top shitter.
Top. Got it.
It's top shitter.
No, the top guy.
Well, your life's already gone, bud.
In fact, I never thought Spino would be this good at killing people.
You just lucky.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, you're trying to copy me. Oh, try copying me now. Yeah, I can't get my ass.
He's not here. He went to get batteries and he's back in the back door. Use the back door.
What are you doing, Reddy?
I would end up killing him if he's on my face.
I'm voting Spino.
I know.
Oh, I think they've got him.
I'm voting Spino.
So it's final, but I'm just gonna vote ups. Just because.
I think they've got him. I think he's fucked up here.
Cool.
What? How could that be possible? What? Yeah, I noticed that, but how could it be a tie, bro? They should know it's Spinal. They should know it's Spinal.
Oh my goodness. I did not think the Polish dinosaur could kill this many people.
How about this? How about we make a deal? Read both us
This is what I'm gonna do to him, watch.
Oh my goodness.
Why I like this game.
Dude, I am learning new things about my friend here. Oh my goodness. Okay, they finally got him.
And you died, and they thought it was me.
I said it was Spino,
Can't
bro.
believe it. It was doing nothing.
Hey, I'm back.
Okay, Spino, fuck you. Why did you kill me?
None of the kills were me.
Well,
I didn't know you could be this proficient at killing people. Why?
I hate when my teammate.
no, nothing personal, pal.
He like
Hold up.
went into a vent and then you were like right next to it.
Master Chief, put on pants.
I didn't kill a single person.
You don't like his ass?
Anyway, I got a
I'm live on Twitch, damn it.
Ooh. You wanna see me put on some pants?
Hey, Spenny, this will be the last one.
Spino, get out of my fucking way. Spino.
Yeah?
Move.
What is it?
I am trying to blow up the fucking asteroids. Move.
You do? That's good.
Where the fuck did the kid go?
Spino.
Disappeared. Oh.
Okay. Let's see if it's gonna work in this world.
Oh my goodness.
I don't even know what's going on.
I literally only trust one person.
Man, this person really does not like the light. Maybe they try and play hide and seek on some shit.
Okay. Boop. Boop. Y'all tell me what the inside of the air chute looks like.
What the fuck are you talking about? You got my avion?
I'm not turning it on. I've had one on before.
No, turn it on. This is been updated. Look at
okay.
I killed 2 people when I was there, and they voted me.
Oh, fuck. Okay, top. Top fucking hit the button. Why?
Bum out, boy.
Just killed you in front of
Alright, we're gonna cop shit out.
the back.
Kill the turtle.
Top shit is dead.
Hey, yeah, get out of town.
Gork, are you wearing a diaper? What is that?
Yep.
Guys, he's gonna teleport back into the map and snitch.
Damn.
Hey, why you gonna teleport me?
What does this ball do? Show
Chad.
me.
Hold on, guys. Diamond.
Hey, I think I'm gonna be going.
Look at
Don't
big
click
shit.
it.
What, the board?
Oh, oops.
Okay, never mind.
I'm gonna be going.
Okay.
It was very fun. It was very fun, Pan.
Pet the dinosaur.
Oh, before I go, okay? Before I go.
Oh, Kelly's on the aisle if that's what you're gonna go do. Alright. Turned off the goddamn lights.
I'm gonna follow you so you can get home safely. That's what I tell everybody. Gork, I can see you through walls.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I noticed somebody could be seen through walls, and I'm like, well,
So you can see me through walls.
Hey,
yes, the walls don't mean shit when it comes to you.
Hey,
Yeah, I know.
screamer lady, come here.
That's the whole point.
Okay.
I'm not a Viltrumite. You shouldn't have left me in charge.
Alright, my tasks are done.
Okay.
Hey, lady, if you can vouch for me, I promise I won't kill you.
Alright.
Alright, cool. Sick.
I'm innocent. Are you clear?
I changed my name.
What happened?
Isn't that just
I
fucking
gotta
peaches?
ask you something.
What's up?
Why did I see you walk past me and I turn around and there's a corpse?
Oh, that's
Potential
suspicious.
drive-by, I don't know. I don't know, Kitty saw me do scans, so...
I mean, I did, and I saw him run around in the cameras.
Yeah, well, she could be an imposter.
I mean-
they could be backing each other up. Imposters, you know. This.
There's
oh
only
no,
one
nah.
imposter
Don't
right
listen
now.
to that shit. Oh, there is. Never mind. My bad.
yeah, Kitty has
I
it
don't
all on
listen-
stream, so have fun with that, guys.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's on my Twitch.
Everybody stay just far away from them, watch them scan, and if they can't, then we get them out
Oh,
of
I
here.
already did it. I already did it.
Why would you do it? Yeah.
Because Kitty watched me do it, that's why.
Yeah, like, but I was already there.
Save it. Oh. Yeah, I don't know about that one, Chief. Someone here is an imposter, and I will find out who it is. All right, that's all I'm gonna say.
I don't know about that one, big dog.
I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you.
No, we're not ready to vote.
I have a stalker now. That's cool.
Yeah, nobody got voted out.
I don't keep an eye on him, bro. I don't know about you.
On who?
Alright, I'm going back to security because I'm already done.
Yeah, go to security. Make sure you tell us who this
Come with me.
Oh, I also have scans.
Nice.
Oh, that's me. Literally.
Do you scan then?
I am.
Okay.
There you go. There you go. There you are. Okay, so we're all. Well, you haven't done anything.
Well, I mean, I haven't done anything.
I think it might be the green furry guy.
Green furry guy.
I just hit my wall again.
I haven't seen him do a task yet.
Here's my new problem. Slow mo.
I'm doing scan. I'm doing scan. You're not doing
I bet you look like this in real life.
Crouch, and this is my
come home.
crouch animation.
Viltrumites. Right, I've got to go.
Viltrumites.
Look at my fucking spear.
Buddy. Buddy boy.
Ooh. Let me just fix that up real quick.
Yeah, I know. I got you. Give me a second.
Dang.
There are traitors all around.
Canon that the Hollow Knight can now fly.
That's crazy that you killed me and everybody.
Remaining last time. Why?
Let's go.
Wait, what?
Good job, Kitty. Good content right there. You see that? That's good content.
What the frick?
You say so.
Unbelievable.
Mr. Kitty.
I was like, I couldn't believe it either.
Live everything saying let me
She never said that. I said that. Told you.
Yeah, no, I just stood there and said yes. That's all I did.
Good strategy. Good strategy. Hell yeah.
Get out.
You guys ready? You guys ready?
I can't even unequip this.
Freaking do it. You guys ready?
It's
You guys
stuck
ready?
in your. They glued that shit.
I don't even have
Can
a
I get a
hand.
hell yeah?
It's just a gun.
Okay, give me a hell yeah.
Let me on your dark red ball.
I go to
Let me on your fucking dark red ball.
What the fuck was that noise?
Well, somebody played the VRChat disconnect noise.
Let me go to this fucking
These guys can
this one.
It's
All the
official. This
sound
monkey
just
can
disappeared. It
fly.
scared me.
Dixon, look at this.
Yes?
Remember this, Abby?
Y'all know what I can do to you?
Didn't I give you this, Abby, too?
Shit.
No, I've never seen that happen before.
I thought I showed you it before, back in that role-playing world. That
There's a lot of
stadium, whatever the
those.
fuck. The acting one.
Oh,
The one where they,
I got banned on that one.
Yeah, because like I thought it was you.
Oh my goodness.
I'm really good at it, you know, lying and stuff. So
yeah,
I just kept saying.
Oh, I got medbay scan.
Oh, do you now? Alright, well, I'm gonna say that I formally saw you do this, but this stays between us, okay? So I won't tell you.
I'm gonna say that I didn't see you scan and you're lying.
Sounds like a good deal, right?
Oh wait, no, because this is
Don't worry, this is good content, Kitty.
You say so. Alright, where's the rest of my shit? There it is. Oh fuck, who invited Darth Vader? Oh, come on. Oh shit.
Hey yo, you, bro.
It's sick though.
No, not you, not me. Them. It's not me. It's not me. It's not me.
Dude, I was commenting on the fact that bro was Darth Vader. I wasn't saying that he should die.
What? What's going on?
I was too busy flying.
I didn't kill shit.
Yeah, for some reason Glacier Squirrel showed up as Darth Vader and it confused the crap out of me. Yeah, I was about to go unlock the reactor. And plus I did medbay scan. Gorka and the cookie saw me.
No, she did not. She's lying.
Perhaps.
Oh, fuck you.
We did, perhaps we didn't.
Oh, fuck you.
Mayhaps,
Yeah,
little
Dixon.
floof. Mayhaps.
Dixon,
Yeah, what's up?
you're like I'm just sliding like I'm nice.
I was not.
It's like you got wheelies. It's like you got wheelies on. You're just like scrolling down the hallway and shit.
Yeah,
It's funny.
see it sideways.
I know your secrets.
What?
Stop.
I'm practicing my typing speed. Every 2 seconds, I just type 6-7 in chat.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
It's back.
I gotta really concentrate when I'm doing
You ready to die?
What the fuck is that noise?
What?
Was that you?
I don't hear it.
Da-da-da-da-da. You know, that makes sense. That makes fucking sense. Hey, Kirishima.
I'm shaking it. I'm shaking it. Oh, so cute.
Can we kick this guy?
Bruh. You gonna take it in my ass? Thank you. I love you.
Yeah, Kirishima. Turn around and grab the red ball. Oh, never mind. Mug took it.
Oof, okay.
Where are you going? I need to fix the ball.
If only you believed me.
Only if I am blind and I saw that. My vision is blurry and I saw that spark.
What's that?
Yeah.
Why is
It's so adorable, you know that?
Why is there a pink?
Dude, how did you lose so fast, dog? We're on a spaceship. That's like your home domain.
I was trying. These two asked to get.
Yeah, well, I would say I didn't ask, but I did actually.
I guess I'm just monkey here.
What the hell is that? No, hold up.
Why are you like
No.
either naked or like really little?
No, who is that?
Oh, look at that! Look at the other.
I saw somebody up in the roof.
Can you see that?
Oh.
Oh. Oh yeah.
I'm tired.
This tiny guy. No, there he goes. There he goes. That tiny guy. He's going in the roof.
That tiny guy is crazy.
Yeah, I thought he got stuck in the roof.
Tiny guy, kind
Okay, why you get back in
Yep.
the back, dude?
Why did we?
He's just stuck outside, bro. Bro, open the ejection, bro. We need to get back in.
Dude, why did we vote it again? You guys are morbidly obese.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you gotta sneak in, bro.
Where'd he go?
I think
Oh, there he is. Got the ball.
I'm tired, man.
How do I grab this? Which one can I grab? Let me grab it.
Good, drop me. Why are you playing hard?
Why not?
Oh my goodness.
If I can, I will.
Balls itch.
I can use it.
Probably.
Spear. Step it go.
The reactor. How do I do this? I'm not good with puzzles. I'm not.
It's a memory game. Don't worry, kid.
Puzzles.
Memory game, I meant.
Hey, Glacial.
I suck at memory games. Oh, you're in the reactor.
Hey, Lord Vader, can you
Hold on,
stop
gotta
goofing
log
off?
off.
We have a job to do.
Yeah, thanks. Betsy, calibrate distributor.
Jeez, man.
What?
Oh, come on!
I think I know who it is.
Mr. Knight? No, Mr. Knight, why'd you do that? I brought you down.
I was
from the
inside the
ceiling,
scene.
and I looked to my left, and there was a dead guy. There was a dead tiny rat.
What I saw when I walked in was you holding him up and this person leaving.
Okay, yeah. So I got
You did
brought
it?
him down off the ceiling.
Like you.
I looked to my left, and there's a dead body right there. He was right there, and he was looking at it. He was looking at it.
Midnight then, because Midnight would have reported if it was them.
Yeah, but this is probably gonna be my last round, and then I'm gonna go.
Him or Midnight? Or both.
Because my back is starting to hurt.
Alright, let's all vote.
And Jippa.
Skip. So,
I don't have enough information, so I'm just hitting the skip button.
I'm gonna vote for Reddy every time.
Oh, Reddy got voted. God.
Oh shit, it
Or
was a
not.
tie.
Damn.
y'all skip. I don't
For the time to do it.
Oh, you want me to come with you? But are we doing like scan or something? Oh, trash. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so
Mother fluff. Oh shit, Tom Holland's here.
Avatar all the way over there.
What are you looking at?
And the lighting on your face is so fucked. Anyway, I'm gonna log off. I need to go lay down.
I'm just a normal guy. There's nothing special about me.
Chat, I don't believe him. Anyway. Yeah, but I'm gonna log off. You guys have a good day.